This is Mayor Buckley on the best show ever, the Maryland Crabs Podcast.
Live from a grungy kitchen table located in Annapolis, Maryland's scenic and historic capital, it's the Maryland Crabs Podcast. With each episode, your hosts, Tim Hamilton, John Frenay, and the occasional guest will dive in and pick apart the stuff that really matters most to you. We're too lazy to actually solve any of these problems, but we can definitely stir the pot. From schools, politics, parking in the fire lane, to those horrible people who drive BMWs. And here with this week's episode, live from the kitchen table, Tim Hamilton and John Frenay.
All right, so this is embarrassing. I'm sitting in front of a radio god, and we did 3 minutes of a podcast before I realized my levels were all hosed.
Unacceptable.
I can't believe you didn't storm out in the middle of this.
I'm this close. Close. I'm hot tequila close.
Yeah, so what we talked about, I made a grand gesture is that when I texted him, said, hey, you want to do this? And by him, I mean, of course, Michael Hughs of MH Media Strategies. He said,
my first question was why?
Yeah, and I said, well, because I'm bored and I don't want to go home. And we're here without John, so he can't stop me from meandering, which we're going to do
He's
this
not
entire
coming
time.
in?
Nope. I told him that we were going to meet at Davis's, so he's probably there waiting for us right now, all pissed off. So so Mike goes,
They have cold Patron.
Yeah, Michael goes, yeah, so if you bring Patron, and I have like Patron, I have a couple bottles. My wife keeps getting them for my birthday, and so I brought it in, but it's been in the car all day. So I grandly walked in with Patron, and it's like car warm.
Not car warm. That's hot.
Yeah.
And apparently it's old.
Yeah, but in Mexico, well, first of all, it's like a fine wine. It ages well. And in Mexico, it's hot because it's hot down there anyway. So that's how you're supposed to drink it. You're supposed to drink it hot.
Is this rationalizing?
Mm-hmm.
Is that?
Yeah.
Well, I'm not believing it.
I didn't used to like
But I appreciate the gesture.
I didn't like tequila. I lived in New Mexico for years, and I never liked it. And this woman went down, she was Mexican, and she came back, and she goes, she had like it was like just an old bottle with like a ratty cork in it. She goes, it's homemade. I'm like, nah, I don't want to go blind. But I said, I don't like tequila either. And she said, well, you've never had good tequila. And everyone, whenever you don't like something and you tell someone that, they're always like, well, you haven't had good. I don't like deer. So
you haven't had my mom's meatloaf.
Yeah, right. And I'm like, your mom's, it sucks. So I had her tequila. I'm like, oh my God, this is great. So I got the Patron. I like Patron, but I feel like I'm being tricked. I feel like it's crappy tequila, but it's for people who think it's good tequila and they drink it anyway.
To do an AB.
And Jose Cuervo.
Do Bob's tequila.
Bob's.
And then Patron or...
Sammy Hagar has tequila, doesn't he?
He does. Cabo Wabo.
Yeah.
It's actually pretty good.
And that's the other reason that I asked Michael on is because, first of all, we wanted one that was just not Annapolis-centric. And we weren't going to talk politics. We weren't going to talk...
What?
So we'll get to the end of that.
Okay.
Because you're a local guy. But Michael and I go back because he was a big wig. And then he corrected me and said he was a medium wig.
Medium wig.
At CBS,
Small to medium
CBS Radio, you're a radio guy, which is why I'm nervous doing this because you're going to pick up on everything. And then I blew it right away by screwing up the levels. But I couldn't muscle along and just do it anyway because then fixed it in post, as we say in the biz, because it would have sucked. And then you would have called up all furious. And then John would have made fun of me forever.
There's no rap like a scorned radio guy.
Yeah, I know. I see you looking at me. I'm checking levels. Like
for the record, I did buy cold beers.
You did, yeah. They're little ones, but they are cold. They're the
well. Makes us think we'll drink less.
Right. So I ran into Mike. I've known him for years before I knew him. And then I worked at a local business and he and I started doing business together when it dawned on me, like, hey, he's a big shot radio guy. And he kind of came down to the minors when he was working at R&R. And he had this stream of, he's an encyclopedia of music. And he showed me a picture right when Facebook was coming out because he wasn't sure if you told me you didn't want to post it because you didn't want to seem. You said I don't want to.
Yeah, I don't. Which is stupid. I'm a little weird about this.
I would post that stuff if I knew any real. I just know comics and they're all idiots. But if I knew any like real celebrities, I'd post that stuff all the time. But he had a picture of Stevie Ray Vaughn in Double Trouble in the backyard of his house in North Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
And they were just on swing sets. They were, as you do, you just have one of the greatest white blues musicians of all time just swinging in your backyard.
Arguably the best.
Yeah, well, who would be better? Well, Eric Clapton. No, he's better than Eric Clapton. Yeah. He's better than Eric Clapton.
Well, I can't. I mean, it's like people say, you've been around all these artists all your life and in the music business all your life. Who's your favorite? It's like you can't.
But you met all those people, right?
I've been lucky enough to meet a lot of people.
I remember when Lana Del Rey came to your studio and I was all pissed. I said, why didn't you tell me? And you said, precisely because of this.
Yeah.
You would have been. Yeah.
It's just like how you knew me 20 years before you knew me.
Right.
It scares me a little.
I wasn't that stalky.
We actually had a guy in the office who went up to Lana as she was leaving the radio station and said, will you call my wife?
I would totally do that.
You would?
Yeah.
I was so pissed. I mean, you don't, it's...
Well, yeah, I would do that, but I didn't work for you, so I wouldn't do that. But, I mean, it's easy to get starstruck. She's tiny, right?
I get it. She's tiny.
And this was right after the Saturday Night Live debacle, too.
It was, it was like her first coming back into public.
Which I didn't think was that bad.
I didn't either.
I thought it was fine.
She's actually very talented.
A chanteuse.
Chanteuse.
That's what it is, right? That's the category.
It's whatever you want it to be, Tim.
So I'm really into John Mulaney right now. You ever listen to him, the comic?
Mm-mm.
He's hilarious. He was a writer on SNL. He's probably in his mid-30s right now. And he's a fantastic comic. He's really up and coming. And he was talking about when he was on SNL, and he was talking about famous people. Someone asked him, are they all cool? And he goes, no, they're not. And he said, like, for example, Mick Jagger. They said, was Mick Jagger cool? He goes, no, he's not. He goes, he was kind of a prick. He goes, like, he's going, Diet Coke, no. And he put his hand out, and there's a Diet Coke in his hand. And he goes, but think about it. If you were a superstar from when you were 20 on, wouldn't we all be going, Diet Coke, no? He goes, I'd write jokes, and he goes, not funny.
Right. I like the Saturday Night Live bit with Chris Farley when he's talking to Paul McCartney. Yeah. Remember when you played Shea Stadium?
You went to Paul McCartney's house, right?
I did. Yeah, that was wild.
Well,
we were doing.
You got to do more than that.
I was working for NBC at the time, and we were producing nationally, internationally syndicated radio programs. So we'd produce these shows that would be distributed on radio stations all over the country. So, the DC 101 might pick it up in DC and MMR in Philly, and all over. So, but we would create the show, and we did the show from Abbey Road Studios in London.
Did you really?
Yeah.
So you were there?
I got another great Abbey Road story, but we'll get to that.
I don't have any. Good thing you're here.
But we did. It was live to the East Coast at what time was it? It was like an 8:00 start.
So it was like 2 a.m. there, right?
Yeah. So it was late night, but we met at like 2 p.m. at Abbey Road to do a rehearsal and kind of a walkthrough. He was releasing a new album, so the concept was we play tracks from the album. He talks about. Gosh, this had to be 87.
So that was
something.
Put it there. Flowers in the Dirt. Flowers in the Dirt.
Wow.
Yep.
Nicely done.
Thank you.
I'm impressed.
Yeah.
You got cred.
Yeah, I love it. That's a great album.
You want me to finish or you want to talk about it?
No, you go.
So we did this rehearsal walkthrough, whatever you want to call it, and positively a delightful man. Couldn't have been sweeter.
I'm glad to hear that. That's how
he was. If you could get past the point of holy shit, I'm sitting here with Paul McCartney, it'd be like sitting with you.
Kind of. But I'm taller, I bet. I bet he's a little guy.
And he's smarter.
Well, doy.
But anyway, so we walked through this over a course of about an hour, and there were 3 or 4 of us on the production team traveling from New York and in London. And he goes, and I'm not going to fake a British accent. You can say it. So what are you boys doing now? He said, well, we're probably going to go back to the hotel and
it's like
kill
sitting
time.
here with Paul McCartney right now.
Yeah. But he's asking us what we're going to do. And he goes, would you like to come for a spot of tea? And I'm like, no, we
I don't
want
drink
to do
tea.
No, that's cool. You go ahead. So of course,
Right.
I thought we were going to whatever the British equivalent of a tea shop is or a coffee shop. And he goes, well, we'll go to my flat. And he goes, just follow me. So we had a driver because we're in a foreign land. And so
he had a driver too, right? He's not driving his own car.
I believe he had a driver. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So he just follow me. So we're driving through London. We get to this place that is pretty nondescript. I don't remember where it was, but nice, certainly very nice. And we pull up and park and walk into Paul McCartney's, a flat, apartment, condo, whatever. But I mean, super nice. Walks in. There were no butlers. There were no people or staff or security or anything. And he goes, have a seat. He goes, I'll get you some tea. And I'll never forget, I leaned over to my buddy who I was working with, and I said, can I say curse words?
Yeah. Fuck yeah.
I said, a fucking beetle just went into his kitchen to get us tea. And then for the next hour and a half, we sat there talking.
You want to take the tea home with you? So you
I want to take everything home with me. I'm taking the throw pillow and, But it was absolutely awesome and just so normal.
But do you ever get, because you've met all these people, like I dabbled in comedy years ago, and I found out most comics are broken people. I mean, for better or for worse.
It's a twisted bunch.
Yeah, and if you said, who was the nicest person you ever met, it would be like Adam Sandler or something. Who was the biggest prick? Dennis Leary. These are but they're very definitive. But in music, when you meet these people, does it shatter anything? Like, for example, and we'll talk about it later because I'm very interested. But I'm a huge Pink Floyd fan, and every interview I've heard with Roger Waters, he's just an ass. and I can see why he would be.
Yeah. That was the other part of my Abbey Road. We did a similar show with Roger Waters from Abbey Road, which led to my absolute coolest rock and roll experience in my life. And I've been lucky enough to have a few pretty neat ones. But we did a show similar to that with Roger Waters. However, it was live to the East Coast at 10 p.m. So we were live at 3 a.m. London time. Mm-hmm. So Roger showed up at Abbey Road at around 2, kind of explained what we're doing. He was kind of chilly and, it's
I totally get that.
Yeah, how's this going to go? And we did the show, and the host, Dan Neer from WNEW in New York, who's still just one of my favorite DJs of all time, and anybody from New York knows who Dano is, was our host. And it was really going well. It was just a terrific conversation, and he's telling stories, and it wasn't the Roger Waters we feared.
Right.
And it just, before we knew it, the 90 minutes was up, and it's 4:30, and, it's time to sign off. But before we left, Dan said, "Do you think you would ever perform The Wall again?" And this show was in 1988. And he said, almost as if he'd been thinking about it, he goes, "I suppose if the Berlin Wall ever came down, I might consider it." Well, a year later, 1989, down comes the wall, and a show is announced that Roger Waters is going to perform in Berlin.
July 91, right?
That show?
Yeah.
I think it was 1990.
Maybe.
There's a picture over here in my office.
Yeah, I remember listening.
Talk for a minute. I'll get the exact date.
Well, I don't know why I remember this, but I was at Montgomery Mall in Bethesda. I was home from college, and I was listening to it on the radio because it was simulcast live on DC 101 or something
July
like that.
21st, 1990.
Okay.
So anyway, this is probably 6 months before. The 5 of us that were involved in the production of that show get a call from Roger's manager with a personal invitation to be flown to Berlin as Roger's guest to see the show and basically be, full access. Unbelievable. And the show took place on an area called Potsdamer's Platz, which was the no man land between East and West Berlin.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Prior to that, it's rumored to that was where Hitler's bunker was when he committed suicide.
Get out of here.
It's rumored.
Right.
I don't know any facts about that. But it's this vast expanse of land that nobody could set foot on. And 500,000 people piled into this Platz, to see Roger Waters and the likes of Van Morrison and Bryan Adams and the Scorpions and the band and Joni Mitchell and Cyndi Lauper. Sinead O'Connor.
She did her version of Mother's I like better than their version. It was her in the band.
And Van's Comfortably Numb version is ridiculous. But it was so wild because it's just this flat expanse of land and all these people are there, and they had one set of bleachers for VIPs. And that, luckily enough, is where we sat, kind of off to the side. And to get backstage, this was before the whole wall was down, but to get backstage, they carved a hole about 8 feet wide behind the bleachers to go to the East Berlin side, walk down about 100 yards to the backstage entrance, where they carved another 8-foot section out. And that's where you went in for hospitality and all the stuff backstage. But without question, I've seen hundreds of concerts, but without question, that was by far my absolute favorite and most amazing rock and roll experience.
I had that double CD still. I like, and I was listening.
The DVD is unbelievable. The whole show's on DVD. If nobody's ever seen it, they build up the styrofoam wall during the course of the show to the point where towards the end, the band is completely behind the wall. And they just had cameras. You didn't see the band live. Cool. And the most amazing thing, and I still get goosebumps thinking about it, at the end of the wall, the chant is "Tear down the wall, tear down the wall." And we're sitting right on the edge of the wall, and right behind us is all these gray, brown, bleak East Berlin apartments. And there's 500,000 people chanting this, enthusiastic concert goers. And the people are hanging out of their windows and whatever balconies they may have on the East Berlin side, shouting it louder than the people in the concert.
Really?
And here's, I was with a group of 10 jaded radio geeks bawling our friggin' eyes out. Man. It was just so powerful. And if it's that powerful to us, imagine how powerful it was to these people who have, lived divided for so long. But absolutely an unbelievable experience. So,
well, it was for me. It's I'm a huge Pink Floyd fan, and The Wall was just that album meant a lot to me in high school. And I remember just hearing the variations. I was a purist at that point. Is that I didn't want to hear any variations of that, but hearing Joni Mitchell did Goodbye Blue Sky, and Sinead O'Connor doing Mother. It was spectacular.
Bryan Adams' Young Lust.
Oh, yeah, I forgot about that. Bryan Adams, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they had a weird collection of people. The Scorpions, who were a German band. The band was there.
The band was awesome.
I'm going to go back and watch that.
I know. I saw Roger Waters do The Wall about 4 years ago when he came to D.C.
Mm-hmm.
And like you said, I got goosebumps when he did In the Flesh, the very first song. Yeah. It was the loudest concert. Not like you. I've been not nearly as many, but I've been to a couple hundred concerts. That was the loudest concert I've ever been into in my life, to the point that a week after going, I was telling my wife, I'm like, I think I have to go get my ears checked because I had like ringing. I had tinnitus from the concert. It was that loud. I've never been to something, but it was just amazing.
Yeah.
He just did an incredible job.
Performer. And, all credit to David Gilmour and Nick Mason and the other guys, but Roger Waters was Pink Floyd.
Well, they did a great interview I watched a couple of years ago, and he was talking about that when he went to them, and he says, sorry, mates, the band's done. I'm leaving. And they're like, well, have fun. And he's like, what? And they're saying, we're keeping it. And he said, and he seemed like an ass, but there was a poignancy to when he said this. He goes, for me, it was a moment of reckoning when I was in like this, kind of a Ram's Head-esque size place doing, and he goes, and next door at the arena, they had Pink Floyd during the Delicate Sound of Thunder tour.
Oh, right.
And he goes, it was just, I went home to my hotel and just about cried. But, and you're right. I mean, I like Delicate Sound of Thunder. I love that. It's a great album and everything.
No, David Gilmour is an unbelievable guitarist. And I mean, the Pink Floyd shows were good without Roger Waters, but they were good.
But all their albums, I mean, for especially the age, I was in high school, so for Teenage Angst, that was that was perfect. It was that, and No One Understands Me. I don't know what kids do today for that kind of angst. Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, what album changed? I'll tell you, the album that changed me for that reason was, ironically enough, I mean, and I'm huge into music, and I kind of regret that there's no more albums per se, because remember your mom would say, where are you going? You're going, I'm going upstairs to listen to music. Yep. And you go up and you put on your cans like I got now, and you'd sit on your bed, and you'd have the album out there, maybe you'd roll a joint on it or whatever, but you'd have the album art, and you'd have the lyrics, and you'd follow along, and it was all a cohesive package, and the songs were in the order in which the artist wanted you to hear them.
Exactly.
So,
and so many of them told the story through side one and side two.
Yeah, and Pink Floyd was certainly, and The Who, of course, when you had Quadrophenia and Tommy and all. And so I love the fact that you have instant access right now to any song that you want, but I feel like you're losing a little something with the artist when you say that was a phenomenal album. So the album that kind of changed for me, and I love everything from, my best Feel Sorry for Yourself album when I got dumped or whatever was Blood on the Tracks, Bob Dylan. It was just fantastic. But believe it or not, it was Fear of a Black Planet by Public, because I love hip hop. But I mean, that to me was in 1989. And that was when Do the Right Thing came out. And the country was super racially charged at the time, and Al Sharpton and Tawana Brawley. And for me, that was the first album that I heard that was like political. They were like an angry Bob Dylan. They were just, and that to me kind of opened my eyes. It was I think I was a little too young for punk. Punk came out when I was, or was in its tail end when I was in middle school. And it wasn't, when I got to high school, it was the 80s, so there wasn't a whole lot of angry music out there. Even the Violent Femmes weren't that violent. But when I heard Fear of a Black Planet, that was the first time in my life I heard something that was just like, fuck everything. Fuck everything. And as a young guy who knew everything and had a chip on my shoulder, it's, that kind of spoke to me as a white guy, But what was it for you? What was the album that just kind of changed?
There are so many different phases in your life, and each phase is almost defined by an album. But the first significant one that probably comes to mind is Sex Pistols, Nevermind the Bollocks.
Yeah.
I mean, that was teen angst at its peak.
Did you ever see...
It was 3 Chords and the Truth. I was such a fan. Actually, in college, I had 2 piranha fish.
Did you really?
That we would.
You probably had to beat the women off with a stick.
Do PETA listen? Do they listen?
No one listens.
No one listens. And why the hell am I here?
I don't even have this plugged in.
I could be drinking hot tequila.
It'll cool off by the end of this.
Years later, this is probably 1995 or so, I went to see Public Image Limited.
Oh, yeah.
Who opened for Big Audio Dynamite. And The Clash, London Calling, that's probably another album. I mean, London Calling. So anyway, but Public Image Limited opened for, and that was Johnny Rotten's band, for people that don't know, after Sex Pistols.
Seattle. There's a big song with Seattle, and what was the other song?
Did they have big songs?
Well, for them.
But so we went and we saw Public Image Limited and then Big Audio Dynamite. And I was such a Clash fan. I hated Big Audio Dynamite because it just, rhythmic Clash didn't fit with me, and I had such respect for the Clash. And so we watched probably 3 or 4 or 5 songs of Big Audio Dynamite. My wife and I were walking out, and as we had the chant, I mean, after Public Image Limited, we went backstage, said hello to Johnny, and I'm like,
Johnny.
That was probably one I was kind of, drooling a little bit, a little starstruck. And I'm like, he's such a nice guy. And I'm like, spit on me or something, what? But super nice guy. So we went out, watched a little bit of Big Audio Dynamite, and walked out. And we're walking out into the parking lot, and everybody was still in the venue. And limo comes by and stops right by us, and the window rolls down. It's Johnny, and he goes, "Where are you going?" And I said, "I came to see you. I was a big Clash fan. I'm just not into Big Audio Dynamite." And he goes, "It's fucking disco rubbish."
And they said, "Come in the car. We're going to go to Paul McCartney's for tea."
Right. And drove off. And
that's hilarious.
That was that. But yeah. So back to your question. Probably that. But then London Calling, the Jam. I mean, I was into that scene in the late 70s. I'm a couple years older than you are.
Yeah, but not.
But then, you get into, the Zeppelin and, even Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young.
I'm on such a Crosby, Stills and Nash kick the last couple weeks.
We just had David Crosby out at the Stanley.
Did you really?
The day of the Capitol shootings.
Oh, man.
Dude, I was sitting, he was doing sound check, which here's a guy, he's 76 or something.
Is he that old?
Something like that.
Yeah, I guess he would.
And he did sound check for an hour and a half. This is a guy that could show up and throw up and the crowd will love it. But an hour and a half of sound check. And I unfortunately got the news of the shooting when I was in Colorado. Our client is the Stanley Hotel where Stephen King wrote The Shining.
Yeah, it's a big.
And we book performances out there at their 100-year-old concert hall, the Flora B. Stanley Concert Hall. And we've had Big Bad Voodoo Daddy, Rick Springfield, Los Lobos, and we had David Crosby on June 28th. And I had heard the news. I was thinking of all my friends at the Capitol and, oh my gosh, what's going on? It's my home city, and I'm in Colorado. And I get a text from a friend who said Wendy Winters might be one of them we lost. And I'm sitting out back at the rear entrance to this 100-year-old beautiful concert hall, and I'm sobbing in my hands. And they had finished sound check, and out walks David Crosby to head to his bus. And he sees me sitting there, and he said, "Are you okay?" And I said, "I just found out, this terrible shooting happened in Annapolis. I live in Annapolis, and I lost a dear friend in Wendy Winters." And he grabbed me by my arms and lifted me up. So I was standing up, gave me a giant ass David Crosby bear hug. I'm crying now, think about it. And he goes, and leans in my ear and he says, "This isn't the America I grew up in."
Oh, man.
And I'm like, I'm just, and then after the show, later that night, we went backstage to take pictures and stuff. And he walks right up to me, puts his finger on my chest. He said, "That was for your friend."
Oh, man, that's
and
fantastic.
It's just, but what a great, it's the guy. I mean, think of the music. Holy cow, Crosby.
Well, I saw him, I guess on might be like my 21st birthday or 20th birthday. I'd come back from college because I went to college in the sticks in Western PA, and there's no music up there, no concerts. And that was like in the late 80s. So it was like, it was like hair bands. The hair bands were really big. Like
Journey
Poison.
Sticks.
Yeah, exactly. It was WDVE was the nearest station out of Pittsburgh, right?
Sure.
So we'd come back, we'd go to Meriwether Post, which at the time was really hot, and then the Bayou, which was, under the Whitehurst Freeway in Georgetown, and I don't think it's there anymore, we saw Crosby, Stills and Nash, which, I loved as a kid because my parents were baby boomers, and so I'm odd that I'm a Gen X child of a baby boomer. That doesn't usually happen. So I was raised on all their music too, everything from Motown to Eagles, huge Harry Chapin fans. I just love.
My dad was a big Janis Joplin fan.
Yeah. So we went to go see Crosby, Stills and Nash, and it was David Crosby had just gotten sober. So every song was about being sober.
Oh, dear God.
And I love him, but I'm like, just do Wooden Ships. Come on.
Right.
Just
yeah.
Sweet Judy Blue Eyes. He goes, "Here's a song. It's called The Monkey on My Back." I'm like, oh, I can't. What was the first album you bought? I tell you, the first album I ever bought, I was 7, and I bought Goodbye Yellow Brick Road because I went to Peaches. Oh, you didn't grow up around here. You grew up where? Ohio, right?
Peaches in Ohio.
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
So we went to Peaches, and I just liked
I had the
cover.
crates for my albums.
Yeah, we had the album crates.
Yeah. First album I bought, God, it could have been Kiss. That's not it.
I never got into Kiss.
I wrote a 9th grade report because I was in the Kiss Army on Kiss.
Of course you were.
I think I still have it.
Yeah, and you have your membership badge and everything.
Oh, hell yeah.
On Beth? You did your whole 3 pages alone on Beth?
Beth.
What could you do?
Beth, I hear you call.
I mean, that was the big thing 10 years ago when, what was that, Napster came out. And you could indulge the guilty pleasures.
Oh, yeah.
Because you didn't have to buy
What's
the album.
your guilty pleasure song? Guilty pleasure band.
Well, so there's like one-hit wonders. Who doesn't like a one-hit wonder? But I mean, I can listen to Brandy, You're a Fine Girl over and over. And I don't even know if that's a guilty pleasure. I'd have to say, I don't know. Is there anything, it's kind of the point that it's no longer guilty. Like, you're not ashamed of anything. Like,
I remember in high school.
You listen to a Carpenter's song right now and go, I like that song. Because you don't have to buy the album, so there's no commitment. So, like, it used to be you listen to it ironically, and you don't listen to it ironically anymore.
I was in high school, and this was totally during our Ramones, Sex Pistols phase, so ripped up jeans and, like, the real Ramones shirts, not like the ones you see now that are, the reproductions. And we went to see Air Supply. So, and I played drums. You can't call me a drummer.
What do they call that? They call that whip rock? No, that wasn't whip rock. That was like...
It was just, to reflect on it, it's just kind of gross, But I loved that before every chorus, the drums went boom, 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 boom. And then they go into the chorus. It was just, so it became predictable that we're just, air drumming it. And it, we were the rebels at the Air Supply concert, but I loved it.
There was a comic, and I'm not ripping him off because this was probably 25 years ago, and I can't remember his name. I wish I could, but he called it Brickums. Like when you listen to metal. And I'm not going to be able to do this. It's going to suck on a podcast. But he would say, he would talk about the hair bands and like that you'd be in concert and it'd be like the guitar go. Oh, yeah.
Right. That's similar. Yeah.
But I don't know if there's any guilty
pleasures. I love
pleasures.
Those cliches of like the guitar pick screeching, along the guitar neck.
Yeah, Eddie Van Halen style.
And then the 3 guitarists lined up all bopping in the same beat. I mean, just
I know. See, being at
2
Ram's
drummer
Head,
bands.
You ever do that at Ram's Head though? And Ram's Head's a great venue, and I love
awesome
watching
venue.
people there.
Yep.
And just seeing like Robert Cray. I'm a big Robert Cray fan. Just to see Robert Cray, who's a huge dude by the way. He's like 6'6". I didn't know he was that big. But seeing him in that intimate venue. But have you ever gone to see somebody and then halfway through, it seemed like a good idea when you bought the ticket, and then you're just like, how many more songs? And that for me was Cowboy Junkies, who are wonderful. And the Trinity Sessions is a great album. I listened to it in college. Right. It was a great mellow one. But then you go to see them, and after a half hour, you're like, this is a little bit of a... But we were walking out, and my wife was pregnant with my second kid, and Margot Timmons was at the door, and she just had some Earth Mother thing. She's got her hands on my wife's belly, and my wife, I was like, oh, can we go now?
Okay, cool.
We're out.
We're blessed.
I know. What was the best concert you ever saw?
That's not a fair question. I mean, the best concert experience was by far The Wall.
Yeah.
One of my favorite concerts was probably Peter Gabriel.
I can see that. He's amazing.
He's a showman. And you know who else is
He came out dressed as a giant daisy in the days of Genesis.
But like Tony Levin on bass, and his band was ridiculous. Eric Clapton at Royal Albert Music Hall was unbelievable.
You see his documentary, by the way? It was on HBO over the summer. Mm-hmm. No, back in spring.
No.
I didn't know half that stuff about it. He went on some like apparently some racist rant during a concert. Like
really?
At the height of his booze. And that's like when he knew that he had to go into rehab, and he came out and he's like, I don't know where that all came from. I'm not a racist person. I'm like, well, a little bit.
I was never really a big Clapton fan, but when you see him
I am.
Absolutely wailing on a guitar solo and just walking around the stage like he could be holding a conversation with somebody. He's wailing on a guitar solo. I mean, it's just he's just masterful.
Yeah, well, he can't do that anymore. He's got nerve damage in his fingers, so he can't. That's sort of like Pete Townsend going
deaf.
Yeah, that's just going to happen. But I was thinking about this. Like, there's some point when like all that Gen X or the baby boomer music, all their idols, they all started.
Can you talk loud for a minute? I'm going to get us 2 more beers.
Yeah, all right, that's not a problem. Hey, we can do the magic of editing. Watch this. He's walking out of the room, and then I'm going to cut it so he's back here magically. Watch this. There, I just edited that. Through the magic of editing, they didn't know you walked away. Oh, yeah, I can need the can. Look, bottle opener here.
I'd love some of that tequila if it weren't so hot.
Well, actually, I was going to surprise you, and I went into the freezer there to see if you had ice cubes, but you didn't have ice cubes.
I don't have ice cubes. Got an ice pack because I got bit by a wasp yesterday.
Oh, I saw that. Hand. Look at that. Holy crap.
It's like Mickey Mouse hands.
Yeah, you look like Minute Bowl. You could palm a cantaloupe.
It hurt like a
watermelon.
mother.
Well, I tell you what. Why don't we take a quick break? When we come back, and we'll put something on your hand, and we'll talk more music. I like this.
Sounds
See,
good.
John's not here to keep us all
Yeah,
contained.
nice.
We can't do
Excellent.
this all without John.
Hell with John.
Here's to the teacher who spends her weekend helping children who need a little extra attention. To the soldier who missed the birth of his baby while serving overseas. To the EMT working full-time and taking night classes. To the police officers and firefighters working long hours away from their families to keep our families safe. Here's to you, our hometown heroes. I'm Alan Hyatt, Chairman and President of Severn Bank, and we know there are many heroes among us. Men and women who serve without expecting anything in return. Which is why we're honored to offer our Hometown Heroes program to educators, law enforcement officers, firefighters, first responders, healthcare workers, and military personnel. Whether you're opening a checking account or buying a new home, we're here to give back to you. Learn more about our Hometown Heroes program at severnbank.com. Severn Bank, here with you.
Member FDIC, Equal Housing Lender.
Suicide is the 10th leading cause of death in the United States, but there is something we can do about it. Each year, thousands of people participate in the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention's Out of the Darkness Walks. These community events raise awareness for suicide prevention and mental health, letting people know they are not alone. Join us Saturday, September 22nd at the Navy Marine Corps Stadium in Annapolis as we walk to fight suicide. It's the 10th annual Annapolis Out of the Darkness Walk. Registration starts at 10 a.m. This is a family and dog-friendly event. Browse resources provided by local health services and learn how you can become a lifesaver. Funds raised by the Midshore Out of the Darkness Walk support research, education, advocacy, and support for those affected by suicide. Remember, suicide prevention starts with everyday heroes like you. Register today at afsp.org/Annapolis. Together, we can help stop suicide. You are not alone.
So we're talking Jackson Browne on the break. And my parents were at the recording of Running on Empty, that album.
Oh, right. They did it at Meriwether.
Yeah, in 1978. So both my parents were
Wow.
there. Yeah. I remember them going out. I don't know why, but I remember them going to the concert because I was 8 years old. So I was
He's a
in
great
second
guy.
or third grade.
Great guy.
I'm a big fan. I love Jackson
And you know,
Browne.
like he wrote Rock Me on the Water when he was 15.
Did he really?
Yeah. It's still a great song.
Run on Empty and The Pretender. Those are two great albums. That album
It's one
is
of
just
those
flawless.
songs, yeah.
So during the break too, so we're outside drinking beers on the balcony, and Michael's wife rolls up with a truck full of pictures, and I'm going to post them. They're going to be posted
Why does
too.
she hate me?
Because you've been married for 32 years. My wife, I'm telling you, if something happens where I'm on the boat and I disappear, my wife somehow gets the boat back, I want an autopsy, and I want it all checked out.
To prove what you think
Yeah.
probably happened.
Yeah, but I'm looking. You were a savant, huh? A young hotshot radio guy.
I was responsible for a lot of rock stations.
Yeah, because let's see, we're looking at FMQB,
Yeah. It's like an industry trade publication.
and there you're on the cover. You're looking like kind of Jared Littman's brother. Yeah,
Oh, God, I do.
yeah,
Ian Jared.
yeah. Up close with
The
Michael.
white guy from Ohio. And the
Up close with Michael Hughs. Why'd you get into radio?
I always, it's funny when you were talking about rolling your joints on the album covers and pulling the album out in your bedroom. I took that one step further where I had a cassette deck recorder. Remember the old
Yeah, with the ka-chunk, the black ones.
Yeah.
Wait,
And,
it had the play button and then the
Play
red button.
and you had to hit them both
About
at the same time.
yeah.
But I used to set that up with a microphone stand and record myself introducing those songs.
So you had to hit the post.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I can walk up a post my first.
I was listening to someone doing that on XM radio. We're coming in because I guess they took all these DJs who were out of work and they put them on XM radio. And I was listening to a guy hitting a post like it was 1978. Talking right up to the beginning.
When I first, I was running the CBS stations in Atlanta in the early 2000s. And CBS wanted me to come up and run the 5 CBS stations in D.C.
So you came to here from Atlanta.
I did. And of course, that was back in the Don and Mike heyday at WJFK and Donnie Simpson at PGC.
Yeah.
And
Well, Don and Mike had been around since I was in high school. They were
roaring.
huge.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So I'm
WAVA,
at JFK a week into the gig, and they're on the air 3 to 7, and I get a call in my office from Rob Spiewak, who was one of the producers, and he said, Don and Mike want to see you in the studio. So I walked down there in a commercial break, and he goes, all right, sit down, put on the headphones. I'm like, what's going on? He goes, you'll find out. So they come
one of
back
those
from
sticky
break.
sweet
It's the
things.
Donna Mike show, all of his sounders and
All the
fart
bells
sound effects and bells and everything. This was one of my first interactions with Donna Mike before they used to tell people I liked warm wine enemas.
Well, who doesn't, in all fairness?
Well,
Or warm tequila.
hot tequila. So he comes back from the break and he goes, so you were a DJ? And I said, I was on the air for 15 years. He goes, hit the post. And he starts Norman Greenbaum's Spirit in the Sky, which is about a 18-minute intro, if I remember correctly.
Mm-hmm.
And I launch right into, welcome back to the Donna Mike Show, Washington, D.C. weather, sunshine today, high of 80
Do you do the puke voice
degrees.
still?
What's that?
Do you do the puke voice?
I never puked on the mic. I hate those guys.
That's it. Well, that's what you.
Good morning to you.
Yeah. Well, it starts this morning.
57 minutes
That's
after
like,
the hour of 7
what's his name?
o'clock.
Jack Diamond. I think he's one of those guys.
Yeah, he's okay.
I'm
Jack's
sure
a
he
good
is.
guy.
I don't listen to radio.
But so they, that was their little test. And, let it ride up. Partly cloudy tomorrow, high of 80. It's the Donna Mike Show on 106.7 WJFK.
Right there.
Right onto the post. And they're like, then all the sound effects go off that Don does. And I passed their test. And that was my...
And they made you king of the tribe.
That was my hazing at WJFK. And it only got worse from there.
I think you get off easy.
Oh, it got worse.
It was always that model after the Howard Stern, the war with the program director. Like that became the thing in every...
Don framed it well, and I agreed with him. And we had lunch, and because he explained their show, and he goes, I talk to tens of thousands of people every day who'd love to tell their boss to go fuck themselves. And he goes, and I can. And I said, sure. I said, just don't make it personal. I said, leave my family out of it. You can say anything you want about me. You can laugh at my decisions. You can, I really don't care. I've got a thick skin. And they did. But one time at the CBS Christmas party, my wife was overserved a little bit.
Yeah, it happens.
He chose to make that an irresponsible bartending. So he chose to make that fodder and really went after my wife. And he was off the air for a week.
Oh.
I said, we had an agreement. And he goes, when he came up to my office, he goes, I know why I'm here. He goes, how long? I said, a week. That was our deal.
Stern invented that. I grew up with...
But I get it. I mean... You think about it. You're talking to all these people who hate their jobs and they're stuck in traffic, and their one friend, their only friend at that time before you have your custom podcasts and iTunes and all that stuff, was your friend on the radio. And that's why, when I was on the air, that's how I wanted to break through that invisible barrier and reach through and touch you when you're driving home and make a connection, usually through music because I wasn't a talk show host. But I want you to feel Friday afternoon. I was usually on in afternoons. I want you to feel that. So I did my damnedest to make sure that we had a good time and you had a friend.
You see, I grew up on radio. I grew up listening to DC 101 and Q107. So that was Uncle Johnny and Howard Stern and the Grease Man and all those guys. And Don and Mike. They were all the big ones when I was growing up. And radio was huge. I was telling my kids the other night, saying you'd start at, it was Q107. They were the pop station in the 70s.
It was it. It's how you discovered music.
Right. And you would listen to the top 10 at 10. And you would listen every night from 10 o'clock to close to 11. You listen to the top. I was trying to explain that to my daughter because then you'd come into school the next day.
Concept.
And you would talk about, Dexy's Midnight Runners was number one and you would argue about that. And it was kind of a unifying thing. People were talking about that before, that the fragmentation of media, everything from cable to Netflix to podcast, everything, that you can have whatever you want. And whatever flavor and whatever you want to talk about. And that part's awesome. But you lose a commonality. You think about Roots or The Last MASH, is that you would stay up late and everyone would watch, you'd have 50 million people watch Roots. And the next day, that's literally at the water cooler. That's all you talked about. And that's how radio was too. But I haven't listened to radio in probably 20 years.
It's why I left. With the Deregulation Act, and when... it used to be one owner could have one AM and one FM in a market. Right. Now there's, companies
Clear
with
Channel, everything.
They've got, half of the market. And with that, understandably enough, and I worked for CBS and I loved it for the better part of 12 years, you're reporting to stockholders and there are economies of scale, and suddenly you didn't need that receptionist and You know, you didn't need that second production person, and you wanted to automate overnights, and then you were automating evenings, and you know, then that just started to evaporate. Yeah, and your voice tracking
in someone in the Midwest.
Yeah, I mean, you could be listening to any station in Washington D.C., and there's still a number of, you know, I mean, we brought Elliot in the morning in when I was working with DC 101.
For 20-some years.
Yeah, I mean, it's still a wonderful.
I heard about 9/11
story
from him. He was on the phone with us.
You know, the Junkies. I mean, I love those guys. Donnie Simpson. You know, I mean, they're legends there. But I just didn't want to play that game anymore because it was, I don't know.
Well,
Call me a purist.
Well, no, but I mean, I get what you're saying, because for me, I grew up, you know, listening to DC 101 and Q107. And I was trying to explain to someone the other day when I used to get Rolling Stone in the back. All the charts of the music were in the back, which I loved. So you had your pop chart, you had your country charts, then you had your college rock, which I loved because it was like when I was a kid, that was like
right. It wasn't alternative or any of that. It was college
rock, yeah. And it was like, you know, the Cult, and it was Robin Hitchcock and the Egyptians, and but you could discover new music. And for me at that time, I was too cool for everything, so I'd listen to 99.1 HFS when it was in Bethesda, and that was like the Weasel. Remember that? That was it. The Weasel.
Surf Weasel.
Yeah, I mean, and that's where because you were too cool for everything else, and you're too cool for MTV at that point, because MTV was kind of played out, and so you got to hear all this music you wouldn't hear anywhere else. And I think now, I guess there's more of an opportunity to hear that music, but it's just harder to discover.
It is harder to discover. But the cool thing is, it's now easier for bands.
True. There's no
because
middleman.
You had to be signed to be heard.
True, but now you have to struggle to all the noise out there to be heard.
Yeah, but if you know, depending on what kind of music you like, there are forums and opportunities to narrow the scope a little bit. But, you know, I mean, bands, that whole model, when the record companies basically ignored the advent of digital, they got left behind.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, they're like, this isn't going to be real. This isn't going to work. And then
that was a tsunami. That was amazing. I remember watching that, even at the time, going, they're making such a huge mistake, because Prince at the time had said, this is the future of music. He released his album on his website before Napster, when there was still dial-up, and he said, this is the future. You know, that was huge. And then that almost destroyed him. And I think it was like a forest fire, is that everything burned down, and after that, you just had fresh growth everywhere. And I thought it was kind of a good thing. I mean, there's still good music. Like, people say there's no good music. I mean, I know pop music.
There's a ton of good music. And you can look no further than a mile away.
Yeah. The War on Drugs is fantastic, and the Dirty Projectors. And then I know pop because my daughter's 14. Right. So that's, you know, anyone who's a parent, you know pop. You know, but there's someone said rock's dead. I'm like, I don't think so. There's still a lot of great stuff out there. There's a lot of great music. This is just
There's a ton of great music.
I don't know. For me, it was radio just started to lose its appeal because I just didn't like being dictated to. I like being able to kind of pick what I liked.
Well, that's what it became. It became fragmented to reach a certain demographic, and you've got to deliver this target audience so that you can get on the Geico buy. You know, and which is not, you know, I mean, that's not wrong. And I don't fault the people that are doing it. My agency buys radio still. So, you know, I mean, it's still most certainly relevant. And to this day, still reaches 93% of the U.S. population every week. 93%.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
To me.
I mean, everybody says radio's dead. It's not dead.
Huh.
You know, it's still, you know, its level of importance or like what we reflect on growing up. I mean, that's what I used to lay in bed with my transistor and listen to WLS in Chicago and CKLW in Windsor. You want to hear great radio, listen to CKLW. Their old tapes are online. No, it's all, you know, Byron McGregor, 2020 News. I mean, there's a graphic they used to write, just sucked me in. And I remember listening to that as the young as 10 and telling my parents, I want to be on the radio.
That's funny when you know something the whole time that you want to do. That's how I felt when I was seeing comedy. And like I
showed up on my college campus. I dropped my stuff in my dorm and I went to the campus radio station and said, what can I do?
I think everyone does radio in college just because you get so whenever you meet someone, you go, oh, you're a DJ? I did radio in college.
I wanted to be on the radio and get laid.
Can't do both.
Sorry, kids.
That's why, that doesn't happen when you do a podcast.
Really?
Yeah. No.
Damn it.
Oh, my God, no. Do you listen to podcasts at all?
I do. I listen to yours.
Yeah. But it's not the same as radio.
No, it's not. But I listen to different podcasts. I love This American Life because I just think it is so well produced and edited, and the stories are. Yeah, it's really well done. I like Scott's podcast.
Yeah, Scott McMullen.
He does a good job.
Annapolis podcast.
Yeah,
it's funny. I had a friend of mine, or a guy who used to work for me, and he was a graphic designer. And he went to school for graphic design, and he was an artist, and he always got irritated when anyone could buy Photoshop or anyone could buy InDesign at the time. And he goes, yeah, so now everybody, all of a sudden, I went to school for this, I learned this, and I understand.
He's a graphic designer.
Now everybody who happens to be able to buy the software is a graphic designer. So I think you look at radio guys and go, yep, anyone who can get 2 mics and a digital recorder, all of a sudden they're in radio. You go, well, it's podcast.
You have no idea how much now running an advertising and marketing agency, how much stuff we fix from those graphic designers.
Right.
That
just have this stuff.
I'm like, oh, wow, that's so much better. Well, yeah, it's what we do. It's what Catherine does. She's
amazing. She did her logo.
Yeah, she did. Yeah, that's right. She did.
She did a great job.
Yeah, she's terrific. She's the backbone of our agency.
So who was the biggest, of all the people you met, who was the biggest one that just kind of blew you away? I mean, McCartney's got to be there. But then after a while, he's just the guy giving you tea.
Yeah.
I got a better question. Whose death affected you? Like Phil Hartman, he died, and that stuck with me I worked in TV news for years, and that stuck with me for days because I was watching the live feed of the police running out of the house with the daughter. It's the feed that the public doesn't see. So we were watching it live at the studio. And Phil Hartman was just, as a huge fan of comedy, to me, he was just such a genius that stuck with me for a long time. But and Bowie for me was, and I don't know why, because Bowie had more appeal with a generation after him, I think, than maybe his current generation.
Yeah,
and he influenced everyone, but Bowie just really stuck with me. That really bothered me for a long while. And it's not like he died tragically at 32, like SRV, but
Stevie Ray's probably the one that, because 5 months before he was on my kid's swing set in the backyard. And then October 1st, 1990, I think it was, he went down the helicopter.
I remember, again, it was him.
It was October 1st or October 10th. It was early October that year.
And it was a percussionist for Eric Clapton. In that was that as
well. There was only there was one seat left on the story is told. There was one seat left on the helicopter. They were performing in what's that? America? No, it was in Wisconsin.
Oh, I thought it was overseas for some reason.
No, I'm pretty sure it was Wisconsin. There was like Americana Resort, some big resort and golf course and everything. There was some small festival, and there was one more seat on the helicopter, and apparently Stevie took it because the whole band stayed behind and went on the bus. Well, and the sad thing was he just got sober. Right. He just patched things up.
Life
with
by the
Jimmy.
Drop is such an amazing. That's one too. I saw Jimmy Vaughn. He was with the Fabulous Thunderbirds for the people who don't know, and I saw him at American University when I was in high school. And the only song that they did that was big was Tough Enough. And I got a free ticket to go see him. I'm like, all right, let's go. And they were amazing. Yeah. Absolutely spectacular. They did a song together, didn't they? They did TikTok, something like that. Yeah. I think
it was TikTok.
Yeah, it was.
I have to check that out.
But
it was so sad because he was effed up for a while, and I never forget. He was in our house, and it was the day Eric Clapton's Storytellers box set came out.
Oh,
and I owned that 4-album set that I got from the radio station, and I had it on the turntable in my living room. And everybody was outside. It was a beautiful day. We had a pool in the backyard. And I walk in, and Stevie Ray's standing in my living room facing the turntable and the speakers, air guitaring to Eric Clapton.
Seriously.
And it was just like, this is before cell phones. And, I'll never forget that image in my brain. And my wife just kept making him
song was
Cuban coffee. I don't remember the song. But he was crushing cafe con leche, that like the syrup coffee that she was making, and spilling his guts in our kitchen. Had this beautiful Swedish girlfriend, and we had the best afternoon. And then 5 months later, he's gone forever.
That's amazing.
The other one's probably just recently, Anthony Bourdain. Yeah, we got to know him a little bit, and
did you really? I didn't know that.
We had a great time with him.
He's like one of those people that. And that wouldn't bother me, but someone who struggles with depression, I totally get it. And I understand. Yeah. It never, like in that Robin Williams too, is that it never shocks me. I know why. It's just, but you look and you see.
It's a shame that it doesn't shock us. I mean, because you don't. I mean, we're all surrounded by it and addiction these days and everything. But I never want to accept it. Yeah, it's just.
Well, because everyone needs closure and they need a reason for something, and sometimes you just think that. I think it was Henry.
Where's John? We're getting awful deep. He would be.
No, But Henry Rollins, he was, Henry Rollins, he tweeted something after Robin Williams died. And he
Did you ever see him do spoken word on tour?
Actually,
crazy.
And actually, right now, if you go to Joe Rogan Experience podcast, he's been off for the last week, but the last one he did was Henry Rollins. And he's just an amazing guy. Grew up in D.C., in Georgetown,
Oh, you know that?
Yeah. He went to Bullis High School over in Potomac. But he grew up off Foxhall. Like, for everyone who knows Georgetown, it's not too far from M Street. But he tweeted something about Robin Williams where he said, it's a selfish act or something. What, you drinking your beer and dribbling it? But he said something to the point of,
I'm a professional broadcaster. We don't burp on mic.
Yeah, but I don't have the cough switch here, the kill switch.
I was going to say.
I know we're not that professional.
Those were cool.
I did audio I worked in TV news and I did audio, but I was like a monkey. I just was trained to press certain buttons. I wasn't like an audio engineer or anything.
We had when I was at NBC, we had there was union engineers, so I couldn't touch any of the equipment, but I was producing the shows and like, we got to edit here. I'll never forget, I had this engineer, smoking hot engineer, and she was very talented and very good. And we're editing the show. I think it was with the Red Hot Chili Peppers. And I'm like, I'm not sure about that edit. What do you think? And she goes, I'm not paid to think. Tell me where to cut. Just putting everything you got into it.
Did you ever see, of course you did, WKRP in Cincinnati?
Of course.
I was a huge fan, but he only made 2 appearances. It was Bucky. He was the audio engineer, and he was the union guy. And he only made 2 appearances, and he was just, it's one point where Johnny Fever was being held at gunpoint, and the guy starts walking out, and he goes, where are you going? And he goes, I have lunch at 12 o'clock to 12:30, and if you got a problem, take that up with local 531. And the guy just goes, all right, you can go.
Yeah.
Everything I know
certain realities in that show.
Everything I know about radio comes from WKRP. That's held up
As
really
God
well.
is my witness. I thought turkeys could fly.
That's
well, and Les Nessman standing out doing the reports in front of the shop, and the guy going, "What do you get out of here? I'm Les Nessman, winner of the Buckeye Newshawk Award." He's like, "I don't care. Get out from in front of my store."
More music and less Nessman.
More music.
That was such a brilliant. That was such a brilliant show.
I mean, as a radio guy, you just you loved it.
Yeah, you pick it apart. Everyone thought the TV news was a spectacular, excitement. It was broadcast news, and there's people running, and it really wasn't. It was, you're covering city council meetings, and well, I'm sorry I brought the warm Patron.
I appreciate the gesture, Tim.
Yeah, well, hold on.
The thought was there.
Actually,
is it cooling down a little bit?
Yeah, it's actually doable.
Let's do a
at
shot.
This point. You want to do a shot?
Sure.
All right, you got a cup here?
I'll get. Yeah.
All right. I'm going to uncork this. He's going to his kitchenette. He's going to get a couple. Yeah, it's not going to. Oh boy, this is still a little warm. He's going to complain about this.
You can do them in Starbucks shot glasses.
Oh, paper cups. You are classy with a K, my friend.
This is a major, marketing and advertising place.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
Do a big boy shot now, Tim.
Yeah. Uber it. All right.
Cheers.
Cheers. SRV.
Yeah, man. Absolutely.
Hey, thanks for doing this.
Hey, my pleasure. Still don't know why you asked me.
I don't know if I ever did.
It's still hot.
I told you.
This has been the Maryland Crabs Podcast with Tim Hamilton and John Fernay. Sure to follow them at all the regular places, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and online at themarylandcrabs.com. Take a moment to rate us on iTunes. Now, get the hell out of my kitchen. Seriously, go!
You're still here? It's over. Go home.